also a random bolt just chilling down here. That's cool. Those are my favorite, random bolts. What's going on today, guys? Welcome back to Fix It Garage. And here is our next project. So we have another EJ22 here. Difference is this one didn't come out of any cars that I have around here. I bought this one from a wrecking yard. What am I going to use this for? Well, the last time we had one of these in here, we replaced some head gaskets on it, and it was all time-lapsed, and it was all really fast, and I didn't really get a chance to explain a whole lot. Seeing as a common issue on these are head gaskets, I figured we would do a nice tutorial on how to do them using this engine on a stand. I can show you guys how I replace the head gaskets on one of these and give you guys extra information, some tidbits, and some step-by-step instructions. That's what we're going to be doing with this engine for this next project. This will be going in something. I'm not going to tell you what right now. You'll have to stay tuned for that. So first things first, let's get started on tearing this thing apart. So the first step that we need to do to get these head gaskets off is we need to take the intake off. We need to get this whole intake off, which will also take off all of the wiring, all the spark plug wires. It'll get a lot of this other stuff off the top of the engine. That's going to be step one. So we're going to go ahead and we're going to start removing everything to take off this intake manifold. Okay guys, this intake's just about ready to remove. On the back of this engine, this has an EGR pipe that runs back here. So what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna cut it off because we don't need it anymore. And it's kind of just in the way, and a lot of times when you go to unbolt it, they don't always want to come off. So I figure the easiest thing to do is to just cut it off. All right guys, just like that, the EGR pipe is cut off, so now we can keep going on removing this intake. So the intake's off. You can see here that it's out of the way, and now that it's out of the way, there's a whole lot more room. The other thing that I noticed when I take it off is how dirty this is. This is messy, this is disgusting. I think we're gonna tape up like the intake holes, or we'll tape up the exhaust on the bottom side, and I think that we're gonna use our super clean foaming degreaser spray and spray this engine down and pressure wash it, just to get all the oil off this thing. I'm looking at the back side of the engine over on this side that you can't see right now, and it is completely covered in gunked up buildup of oil. I don't like working on dirty engines. I like to clean them before I start working on them. So I think the next thing that we'll do is we'll take these two brackets off, then we'll tape all the holes shut, and then with some duct tape, so I'll replace all this with duct tape, and then we're gonna go pressure wash the engine. So let's do that right now. Okay guys, so we got both those brackets off. The bracket that was here was held on with three 14 millimeter bolts, and this was held on with three 12 millimeter bolts. These brackets normally hold the AC compressor, the alternator, and the power steering pump. Now this engine, when it's done, will not have a compressor or power steering pump, but it will have the alternator. So we're gonna go ahead, when this is all done, and reuse those brackets, but we'll probably cut off the mounting points that we don't need anymore, just to kind of clean them up and make them look a little bit better before this all goes back together and inside its new home, which we're not gonna talk about at all today. So that's where, those are off. The intake, that big piece that I took off is actually held in with four 12 millimeter bolts right there. That's what holds the intake down. Now obviously you saw me, I had to unplug all the, I had to unplug the crank sensor, the oil pressure, the cam sensor, and then two coolant temperature sensor, and a couple coolant temp sensors, if I can speak today. Also I had to unhook the knock sensor. So you have to unplug all the sensors. Also you have the water pipes that run into it. These are for this is what would run to the throttle body for your idle air control. And that's really all you have to unhook. Normally when it's in a car, you have fuel lines you have to take off as well. That'll be over here. You have fuel lines and vacuum lines from here, and on the back they have to take off. Obviously, because this is on a stand, you don't have to do that. But when you go to lift that off, you just need to make sure that everything's disconnected. When I do head gaskets on these, normally I'll pull the whole engine out, so all that stuff that was disconnected when I got the car was all stuff that you would need to disconnect. You have your three connectors back here you have to unplug, your vacuum lines, your fuel lines. That all needs to come off before you pull the engine. But this isn't a tutorial on how to pull an engine, this is just on head gaskets. So we're gonna assume you have the engine already on a stand, and that's kind of where this is gonna go from. So it's the 4 bolts to remove the intake. Make sure you unhook your coolant lines. I didn't have a throttle body on mine, so I only had to hook this one pipe that runs to an emissions device, which we're not going to use when this is all done either. Unhook those sensors, and basically it comes right off. So now that I have that off and I have these brackets out of the way, it's time to tape like all these hoses with some duct tape so it seals better, so I can wash it and not get water inside the crankcase. Even though the oil pan's coming off, I really don't want to fill this thing with water because then it'll rust while it sits, and we don't want that. So right now we're going to start duct taping everything, and then we're going to wheel this guy outside and pressure wash it. Alrighty guys, so this engine is completely taped off. Now it's time to use our super clean foaming degreaser and a pressure washer and get this sucker all cleaned up. Clean. It's still wet, so I'm probably gonna leave all this tape on it. I'll probably let most of this dry for a few days before I really start tearing this thing apart. But I think for tonight, we'll get the outer timing cover and the crank pulley off. And that's probably gonna do it for this video and for this part of the teardown. So let's go ahead and get this pulley off, and let's get this cover off, and let's have a look at this timing belt. So usually when you take off a crank pulley, you either need someone that can hold the back of the engine, the flex plate, the flywheel, and a really big breaker bar, or sometimes you can get away with using a cordless tool. We're gonna try the cordless tool method first. Just like that, bolts out. Super easy, guys. So now that we have the bolt off, we're just gonna slide that pulley off like this. We're gonna keep the bolt with the pulley just so it doesn't get lost. Not that hard to do. So next is gonna be this cover. Normally you'd have two outer covers, but they both were broken because it's a used engine from a wrecking yard. Go figure. That's pretty normal when you buy one of these used. You're gonna have broken timing covers. It looks like this one might also be broken as well, but we're not gonna worry about it. We're gonna go ahead and undo the 10mm bolts that hold this thing on real quick. Now, normally I don't advise using a big gun when taking these apart, but seeing as I didn't bring my smaller one, I don't have the other one set up to take out socket. Like, I don't have it set up to take sockets right now. We're gonna go ahead and we're gonna use this. Know that I don't recommend it though. You don't need something with this much power to remove some 10mm bolts from a timing cover. Alrighty guys, so here's the timing belt. Everything's all torn apart. I would need to set the timing right now because I don't have it set currently. So I'll need to set the timing before I pull this belt off. I think for tonight, I'm gonna go ahead and leave the timing belt on. As you guys saw outside, it's getting to be pretty dark out, so I think this is probably a good stopping point for the first episode. Next week, I think we'll pull the belt and we'll probably pull everything other than the heads, is my guess. Maybe we'll get to the heads, we'll just see. I don't want these to be any more than about 20 minutes. So I think this for tonight is a good stopping point, and then we will pick back up on this in the next episode. Alrighty guys, so that's gonna do it for part 1 of this EJ22 head gasket job. If you guys wanna see more, remember to smash that like button. If you have questions about anything that I've done so far, or about this job, make sure to leave them down in the comments section below. And so you guys don't miss any future videos on this head gasket replacement, remember to subscribe so you can see this entire build series, and also you can see what this engine is going in. You're not gonna wanna miss that. It's gonna be a little unique. So thank you guys all for watching, and remember that on stuff like this, and cars that are like behind me, you should never stop wrenching.